My name is James Mitchell, and I'm a director at the Center for Climate Aligned Finance. Speaking to you today from London, UK. Today I'll be focusing on two questions. Firstly, why financial institutions are measuring climate alignment, and secondly, what this means in practice once they measure alignment. As you'll see throughout this presentation, I'll draw from a recent report called Breaking the Code that we wrote on the topic, as well as from insights derived from close engagement with the private financial sector over the last several years. Before we get started, a quick introduction to the Center for Climate Aligned Finance. The Center works to articulate climate alignment as a norm and to catalyze the agreements, frameworks, and practices to operationalize the concept in the financial sector at a global scale. We do this by working across four key work streams. Firstly, by replicating our work with the Poseidon principles by building sector-specific climate alignment agreements, by shaping global frameworks to create an enabling environment for mobilization in support of climate targets, by supporting individual firms, and by shaping the global conversation in the financial sector. The Center does not do this alone. We collaborate closely with financial institutions, industry, and experts to achieve this. Just to give you a sense of who we're working with today, here's a brief list of our core partners. This is a list that is expanding rapidly. So if you'd like to become a partner or discuss, please do get in touch with us. Now let's begin to answer the first question. Why are financial institutions measuring climate alignment? The past 3 years have seen a plethora of commitments to measure climate alignment, commitments to align with climate targets, as well as the development of platforms and methodologies to help implement such commitments in practice. It should be noted that such commitments have been made across both the public and private financial sector, but public developments really occurred at the beginning of that time period. In the last year or so, it's mostly been developments on the private financial side. But to really understand why financial institutions are actually measuring climate alignment, we need to zoom out a bit more, about 2 decades. To really understand the emergence of this concept, we need to think about it within the context of how expectations of financial institutions have shifted over the past 2 decades. The Equator Principles launched in 2003 and set minimum standards for assessing and managing social and environmental risks. The significance of this agreement was that it marked a departure from the idea that the financial sector was disconnected from what it facilitated in the real economy. Commitments to do more green financing and to screen unsustainable activities followed. And commitments to understand and manage climate-related risks in a systematic way followed that, largely under the auspices of the TCFD. And that takes us to where we have arrived today. Financial institutions are expected to contribute to society's goals, to borrow a very specific line directly from the Principles for Responsible Banking. So to take this as a whole, we've moved from I'm not part of the problem to I'm actively driving solutions. Climate alignment is the end state of this evolution. Today, financial institutions are measuring alignment to meet these rising expectations. But as of late, it should be noted that it's not solely voluntary, but also required in some jurisdictions. For example, French Article 173 is a clear evidence of this. Now on to the second question. What does it mean in practice once you've measured alignment? Based on our review of all existing commitments to alignment, which we published in July, we define a climate alignment commitment as a commitment to assess alignment with climate targets and improve that alignment over time. It is a commitment to influence the real economy. Doing this requires not only an increase in low carbon investment, but also supporting the transition of carbon intensive sectors through engagement, allocation, as well as how financial institutions and sometimes their clients advocate publicly. It should be noted that climate alignment for public financial institutions is somewhat different, focusing instead on how public expenditure can shift finance away from investments that impede outcomes and toward low carbon or NDC compatible pathways. Today, there are a host of platforms and initiatives underway to help financial institutions make good on climate alignment commitments. A recent report, Breaking the Code, linked to the end of this presentation, overviewed many of them. To sort of tie this together, I'll start by reminding you why financial institutions are measuring climate alignment, both to meet rising expectations and in some jurisdictions to meet regulatory requirements. Which brings us to our second question, what an alignment commitment means in practice once you measure. We'll walk through some of the distilled findings from Breaking the Code to really answer that question. A climate alignment commitment is a commitment to assess alignment with climate targets and improve that alignment over time. It is a commitment to influence the real economy, as we stated above. The past 3 years have brought considerable increase in scale, ambition, and specificity of voluntary climate alignment initiatives, with really 3 types of these initiatives emerging. The first is broad climate alignment initiatives. Second is broad collective engagement and advocacy platforms. And the third is sector-specific initiatives. And these apply differently to different financial stakeholders in the investment chain. Asset owners and lenders are making broad climate alignment commitments, whereas the Poseidon principles focus on lenders as well, but are a sector-specific agreement. Some examples of broad climate alignment commitments are the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, as well as the Collective Commitment to Climate Action, or more broadly, the Principles for Responsible Banking, all of which we discuss in more detail in the report I mentioned. It should be noted that asset managers are typically not making alignment commitments due to sort of their role in the investment chain. However, they instead are joining what we call collective influence initiatives, such as Climate Action 100, and some are offering funds that are either climate risk adjusted or constructed to maximize exposure to green revenues under the EU taxonomy. So thank you very much for listening in. Looking forward to a live discussion in October. Of course, feel free to get in touch with us here. Also feel free to download Breaking the Code and look into more depth into the topics we discussed today.